So I just saw Cruella, and it was bad. And to prepare, I rewatched 101 Dalmatians, both the 60s and the 90s versions. The original film is pretty solid, although not amazing. It's got charm and personality, and there's plenty of great animation. The biggest issue I have would probably be the story structure and pacing, but either way, it is definitely at least worth watching. The 90s version is kind of bad. It's definitely a lot less timeless, and there's way too many derivative 90s tropes. Hey, did you like Home Alone? Cause this is Home Alone now. Everything that happens to Horace and Jasper is just Home Alone. There are so many scenes in this film that feel as though they missed the entire point of the original. When Roger and Anita first meet each other, it's because Pongo basically initiated the whole thing. He leads Roger through the park to look for them and then tangles them in his leash, and then they fall into the pond. And she's pretty mad at him at first, and she reflexively pulls out her handkerchief to dry herself off, but it's too wet, and he's like, no, here, have mine. And then they both realize how stupid they are for thinking their handkerchiefs would be dry. And then they laugh and they bond with each other over the absurdity of the situation, and it's a nice and sweet way for these characters to get introduced to each other. But in the 90s movie, they turn everything into this stupid fucking spectacle. Now Pongo is pulling Roger on a bike, and they're going real fast. It's the most 90s thing ever, and it's packed to the brim with music that's indistinguishable from any other film in the time period. And when he finally meets Anita, he's just kind of an asshole. Like, it was all the rage in the 90s to have someone like Jeff Daniels just being angry and annoyed. Ow, something hurt me and now I'm mad. Now that's comedy. There's no more handkerchief scene. I guess nobody carries those in the 90s anymore. Roger is also a game developer. He's just one guy making a video game by himself, and nobody takes him seriously because games are for children. And he's got like a finished game, I guess, and he's pitching it to a studio, but the way that they decide which games they want is they get this little boy to play them, and the boy's like, man, everything is perfect about this game, but there's a villain at the end. It's not scary. I don't like the villain, so no, I'm giving this one a 6 out of 10. And by the end of the movie, when everything has happened and Cruella has fallen into a big thing of poop or something, he's like, Eureka! If I want to make a scary villain, I should base it off of Cruella because she's a scary villain. So he changes the game, and then the kid plays the part, and Cruella shows up in the game, and the kid's like, whoa, I'm scared now. This is almost as scary as Five Nights at Freddy's. 10 out of 10. You get to make millions of dollars now. And that's kind of like the resolution of the movie. He lives in a mansion now. Kind of weird how this video game aspect was a part of the plot. It's almost as if they were trying to market something. Up.
Let's ride the little elevator to another room. It's coming right to us.
Yeah, so they released an actual video game shortly after, and it doesn't look as good as the movie version.
Cool. Back away!
Mr. Veal, I've a warrant for your arrest.
You see, Disney's soulless, cynical cash grab remakes aren't even really a new thing, although it does certainly seem as though they're spamming them at this point. And although the 90s movie was certainly very bad, at least Glenn Close gave an incredibly entertaining performance.
The drawing. Take the drawing from Anita and hand it to me. Is that difficult?
Mr. Veal.
Yes. If we make this coat, it would be as if I were wearing your dog. Woof, woof.
dogs. And that's what was unfortunately missing from this newest film, Cruella, where the entire selling point of the movie is that you're getting an origin story to this wild, crazy, over-the-top, eccentric character, and they just decided to tone her down and nerf her the entire movie. There's like one scene in the movie where it feels as though she's approaching this type of performance, but then they just tone her down again for the rest of the movie. Like, she was only really exaggerated for the short scene in the film where she's like, yes, I am Cruella and I'm sticking with it now. You know, because they want to show some contrast between her Cruella persona and her regular Estella persona. So they showed the contrast and then they forgot about it for the rest of the movie. Outside of this scene, she was just very held back and toned down again, which is a really boring way to approach this character. Even if we ignore the Glenn Close film, Cruella de Vil was quite the standout character in the animated version as well. So if the entire selling point of this film is to market towards people who want to see more of this character, then why don't you just make her like the character that people want to see? Now, some might argue that this is an alternate universe that doesn't need to have any sort of consistency to the other films whatsoever. And although this is technically true, unfortunately Disney is trying to play it both ways here. On one hand, this character is supposedly in her 20s in the 1970s, so obviously she couldn't grow up to be an old woman in the 60s. But on the other hand, this film is constantly reinforcing the idea that the events you're watching are leading up to other events that you're already familiar with. Spoilers for the rest of the video, but honestly, it doesn't even matter. At the end of the movie, we get a post-credits scene of Roger and Anita both receiving Dalmatians from Cruella. So these puppies grow up to be the dogs that you're familiar with in whichever of the properties, even though the timeline doesn't make any sense. Why is she doing this? I don't know. So they can have a post-credits scene so people can go, oh, that's how that happened. Even though nobody was fucking confused as to how two characters could get dogs. Like, you can just buy a dog. What's insanely frustrating about these remakes is that they can never leave any stone unturned. No, Cruella doesn't just have an evil laugh. She saw it on TV first. She got the idea to have an evil laugh. Doesn't this make the character much less interesting? What even is her character anymore if every single trait is just her copying something she saw someone else do? Oh, she saw the Baroness say the word imbeciles, so now she learned how to do that so she can do that later in life. What the fuck? The more you attempt to explain each of her character traits, the less interesting they are. Like, Cruella literally never would have worn a birdcage veil ever if she didn't spill trash on her face. Really? Oh, great. I've always wondered why Han Solo was called Han Solo. That was the one thing about Star Wars that was preventing me from enjoying it, but now that I have that information and I'm not asking why is his name Solo, now I can finally enjoy the other films.
Do you know what his car's called? A devil! It's DeVille, mate. DeVille.
I like her.
Stop it! Why? Is this what character development is to you people? This script is clearly the result of having way too many people stuffing in whatever referential material they can. They don't care how these things get into the movie, but they do care that they get into the movie. Hey, remember Pongo? Here's Pongo at the end of the movie. Now the Roger has Pongo. Remember the song? He's playing the Cruella de Vil song now. See, he's on the piano playing the song. She just gave him a fucking dog! In the 60s film, he was inspired to write the song because she was being such a massive bitch. And now you're inspired to write this spiteful song about her because she gave you a dog? They didn't change the lyrics to reflect some sort of thankfulness or gratitude. This is still the same spiteful hate song and congratulations, you squeezed it into the movie, but now it's contradicting what's happening in the movie. All they care about is that it's there. The whole point of the movie is to squeeze in as many references as possible, even if they're actively contradicting each other. Hey, remember Hell Hall from the other movies? Well, what if instead of it being Hell Hall in this movie, it was Hellman Hall, and then at the end of the movie, she gets rid of the mayonnaise? Were there any feminist themes in this movie other than she's a girl? Is Girl Joker a feminist icon now? Were the Dalmatians the patriarchy? Hey, you ever wonder why Cruella has half black and half white hair? I bet you wonder why she did that. Well, it actually wasn't a part of her character at all because she never decided decided to do it. It was just a birth defect. And when the police are after her, she dyes her hair to not be black and white. You see, you thought that she dyed her hair black and white, but those are just her natural colors. Bet you didn't see that coming. Way to take an aspect that actually could have said something about the character and turn it into, it just happened. I don't know. Fuck it. Hey, you ever wonder why Cruella wants to make a coat out of Dalmatians later? It's because Dalmatians killed her mom? Kind of, not really. Like, obviously the Dalmatians existing in this prequel film are there to justify why she has a fascination with Dalmatians, right? And at the beginning of the movie, it seems like the Dalmatians just really didn't like her mom and pushed her off a cliff. But then later in the movie, we learned that the Baroness had a dog whistle and opportunistically commanded the Dalmatians to push her off the cliff. And this is so that the film absolves Cruella of any guilt in the matter, although the Dalmatians still wouldn't have been outside to do that if you hadn't caused a ruckus inside and had them chase you outside. Anyway, it's kind of annoying because it's as if the film is constantly teasing that they're going to justify why Cruella doesn't like Dalmatians, but they just don't really do that. If this is the logic that they're implying, then she should just not like the Baroness at all, which she doesn't, but she also simultaneously emulates every single character trait from her, because apparently every single molecule of Cruella's personality has to be explained within this film. So they explain it by just having another character that acts like Cruella. And even though Cruella doesn't like her, she finds out that she is her daughter, so she's like, well, I guess I have to just act exactly like her because it's contagious, it's inherited, this is a disease. She basically spends the entire movie trolling the Baroness. Cruella is Jared Leto in Suicide Squad, and the Baroness is everyone else on set, and she's gonna get hella pranked. Oh no, stop pranking me. This is too mean. Stop it. I'm supposed to be the center of attention, and now Cruella's getting all of the attention. No, stop. Stop it. Guys, I'm being pranked. Stop.
You can't stop her prank. She's just too powerful. She's the ultimate jokester, and it's like art at the same time. She's trolling her and also making statements about society at the same time. It's Girl Joker meets Banksy. She's too powerful.
So at the end of the movie, she pulls the ultimate prank and convinces everyone at the Baroness's ball to show up wearing Joker makeup. I mean, the Cruella makeup. So Cruella shows up at the ball, and then the Baroness is like, hey, I don't like you. And then they're outside in the same place where her mom got BTFO'd by the dogs. And the Baroness thinks that she can push her off the cliff without anyone noticing, but unbeknownst to her, that Cruella's friends were inside saying, hey, everybody, you want to go outside? I love how instead of making an announcement that everyone could hear, they individually went up to small groups of people saying, hey, let's go outside. Anyway, the Baroness pushes her off the cliff, and oops, everybody saw it. Now you're going to jail. Also, this is a superhero movie, and Cruella had a parachute the entire time. And she manages to boat to the shore and change her outfit and get her vehicle and show up just in time to fucking flex on her.
Cruella de Vil.
It's spelled devil, but it's pronounced DeVille.
Thanks for literally spelling that out for us. And because everyone in this universe is a fucking moron, nobody can understand that this is Estella. You see, the Baroness pushed Estella off the cliff, and they don't know that it's the same person. The Baroness knows, but nothing she says matters, because to everybody else, it's like, well, how come Cruella's here if you pushed her off the cliff if that was Cruella? And so now, since Cruella's a genius, she owns the Baroness's estate, because Estella wrote in her own will to give everything to her best friend Cruella. And even though there's no body, she just gets all the stuff. The stuff that Estella has because the Baroness went to jail? Like, the Baroness is still alive, so even if Estella is the rightful heir, like, what? She just went to jail? Now she gets everything? And Cruella gets all the stuff from Estella, but there's no body? What? Nothing in this movie makes sense, and nothing is properly justified. Hey, did you know that Cruella actually met Horace and Jasper when they were all 12 years old? They basically saved her, and they've been nice to her forever. So now it makes less sense that she's an absolute bitch to them in the other movies. Why is she so mean to them if they're constantly saving her? So everything else that happens in this movie is 10 years after.
Before I knew it, 10 years had passed.
But all of these characters look like like they've aged 20 years. This is canonically a 22-year-old? Why did Jasper get less black when he aged? What happened to the melanin? Now, even if nothing in this movie made any sense and it was stupid and dumb, but it was still entertaining, then I probably would have enjoyed it. But this movie was legitimately exhausting. It was way too long and boring, and it was an absolute chore to get through. If my roommate wasn't so keen to watch the whole thing, I probably would have turned it off. One of the more constantly irritating elements would have to be the soundtrack. The amount of licensed music that appears in this film has to be some sort of record. You can't even fucking breathe before another classic rock 70s hit song plays, because if you throw things into the movie that people already like, then that means that they'll associate those parts of the movie with things that they like, and the movie doesn't actually have to do anything. It is compensating so incredibly hard, and it is so obvious that the vast majority of these song inclusions were just thrown into the movie in post. Like, we'll hear the beginning of a song, and then it'll fade out really weirdly, and then some dialogue will happen for like a minute, and then it'll fade back into the song as if it was like still supposed to be there. The way in which these songs are used is so distracting. There is an overwhelming lack of restraint when it comes to the inclusion of these songs. Just like all of these nostalgic references in the script, these songs just show up because they can. It doesn't matter if it fits with the scene or if there's any real purpose to it. It's there because it's there, and that's all that matters. Every time a licensed song starts playing, it's like a fucking punchline. It was absolutely exhausting. Oh yeah, there's a part in the movie where Cruella steals the Baroness's Dalmatians, and then in one of her epic trolls, she does a concert and she's wearing Dalmatian spotted dress. Oh no. But then pretty much right after, we find out that she did not use the dogs to make the dress. She was just trolling, I guess. She just wanted to dance and flex while the song played that says, "Now I wanna be a dog." If the song's about you wanting to be a dog, then you obviously should have shown up in a Dalmatian fursuit. What a missed opportunity, jeez. Now, Cruella has already greenlit a sequel, and depending on how successful that is, we might just see the timeline of Cruella catching up to the earlier films. Maybe they'll just redo those and she'll be stealing 99 puppies to make the most epic fursuit. I mean, with how much they actively avoided showing us the justification for why she ends up wanting to kill dogs later in the timeline, if they ever do catch up to that point, they'll probably just retcon it. Like, she'll try to steal all these puppies, and then at the end of the movie, there'll be some big twist where it turns out she wasn't going to make a coat out of them. I was stealing the puppies to take them away from their abusive owners. I was actually never a villain at all, and you were all just conveniently confused. I was planning on starting a Dalmatian puppy shelter named Fur Coat. I can see how you got confused. It sounds stupid, but they just might do it. You gotta love movies like Cruella and Venom that are capitalizing off of the idea of making a villain movie, and then you watch the movie and they're no longer a villain and they're just good guys and they're fighting against evils. What's the point anymore? Anyway, as I said, this movie was exhausting. It had terrible music, terrible editing, terrible story. The acting was like whatever because it was just so fucking held back. It wasn't even a character anymore. It was too long, and you should feel long. And I'm giving this one a 2 out of 10. Thank you. They were so short-staffed, I guess. I guess they just assumed that I knew the basics of certain things that I didn't, because I was being hired
Like,
on without...
he's bad at it.
I mean, like, I'm willing to learn anything, you know? Train me, teach me how to do it, I'll pick it up.